What up, folks? What's going on? Welcome to the Spun Today Podcast, the only podcast that is anchored in writing, but unlimited in scope. I'm your host, Tony Ortiz, and I appreciate you listening. This is episode 248 of the Spun Today Podcast, the Thanksgiving edition. Hopefully you're enjoying it with you and yours. And if you're taking a break between stuffing your faces and watching football, I appreciate you taking the time to listen. This episode might be on the shorter side, but didn't want to leave you all hanging. And on a positive note, you can get back to your festivities that much sooner. In this episode, I'll be speaking about Ralph Barbosa's latest comedy special, Cowabunga. And I'll be telling you about a couple of TV series that have come to an end. Shows that I've broken down seasons of in the past, done a deep dive on each. And although their final seasons were enjoyable, they didn't really warrant, at least for me, the deep dive of the entire series, but definitely wanted to give them honorable mentions nonetheless. So stick around for all that good stuff. But first, I wanted to tell you guys about a quick way you can help support this show if you so choose. First off, if you're doing any Black Friday or early Christmas shopping, please don't forget to use all the affiliate links on my website, spuntoday.com/support, where you'll find Amazon links and discounts to a bunch of other goodies like Athletic Greens, mock-up shots if you're a writer, Libsyn if you're a podcaster or thinking of starting your own podcast, Stitch Fix if you want to update that wardrobe, or perhaps gift a box for the holidays. You'll find all those affiliate links there that will not only help support this podcast, but also give you some pretty cool discounts. spuntoday.com/support. Aside from that, here is another quick way you can help support the Spun Today Podcast, and then we will jump right into the episode. Support the Spun Today Podcast by following me on social, @SpunToday on Twitter, @SpunToday on Instagram. Please also check out and like my Facebook page, facebook.com/SpunToday, and subscribe to my YouTube page as well. On my YouTube page, not only will you get these full-length episodes, but you'll also get to check out some chopped up clips and bonus content. To get to my YouTube page, just search Spun Today on YouTube or click on any of the YouTube icons on the footer of my website. Also, don't forget to rate and review this podcast wherever it is that you're listening. It really does help. Ralph Barbosa's comedy special, Cowabunga. Ralph is a young comedian. He is a Mexican-American from Texas. I first saw him just by chance. I was watching something else on HBO, and the app recommended, I forget exactly what it was. I think it was a Latino comedians montage, or the finalists of some competition or something like that. But it was essentially 2 half-hour specials, one of which was Ralph's and the other was a young lady who's I don't remember, unfortunately. But from that HBO half hour, I thought he was dope, super funny, that I'm sure would have a great comedic career. He's in his mid-20s, I want to say 26, 27, maybe 28. But he was really funny. He had really good callbacks. I think I broke down that special perhaps in the past here on the podcast. I'm not remembering offhand right now, but he had some great callbacks in it. Good joke writing. Something about him, he has a very calm, laid back, kind of seems high all the time, that type of demeanor. But that demeanor helps hold your attention in an interesting way as an audience member. And he has bits and, bigger chunks. But I think of his comedy more, and I don't know if this is accurate to say, but at least this is what I think of when I think about his comedy. He has more non sequiturs, one-liners, 1 or 2 liners that stand out more, at least for me, from his bits and bigger chunks that I really enjoy, because it highlights how much of an attention to detail he pays to just mundane, everyday situations and happenings that we all encounter. and how he's able to take those and make them funny, which is great. And I'm looking forward to seeing how he continues to like evolve and grow within his craft. And he's again already really, really good, super funny and enjoyable. He has this dope bit on this new special, Cowabunga, available on Netflix, by the way, if I didn't mention that earlier, where he's talking about bottled water and how it's like a big feat that he drank a water today because all he normally drinks is soda, which is definitely relatable, especially like when I was younger. Definitely not anymore. That shit catches up to you, but I could literally remember like my teenage years drinking zero water and nothing but like soda and like iced tea. That's how I would get technically H2O, is by, you know, mixing my own fucking brisk Nestea or something like that in a big jug of water. But he parlays that into speaking about like fancy waters and, you know, and like Fiji bottles, and it just had me dying because he was like, one of the shittiest bottle of water that people judge you about is when you drink Dasani. And he was like, but I don't mind Dasani. It reminds me of my childhood because it tastes like manguera, which for my Hispanically challenged folks out there, manguera is hose water. So it tastes like the water from the hose that you used to drink when you were a kid. He has another one that's super funny about like being religious, like growing up, you know, with religious family members and not going to church. And he's like, folks like that, like him, you know, have like the same kind of mentality where it's like you feel like if you're good enough, you'll get into heaven, and that God is kind of like the police chief in the movies that at the end he's scolding the young detective, and he's like, you don't play by the book, but you're a damn good detective, get in here. And that's essentially like how God's gonna be when you get to the pearly gates. And he's done a lot of pods and interviews where I've been able to see more into his personality and how he is like off stage as he's promoting this latest special. So if you're into that kind of stuff, definitely check him out. He's done Neil Brennan's Blocks, he's done Flagrant with Andrew Schultz, he's done Camp with Mark Agnon, Felipe Esparza's podcast. He did a Big Boy interview, and I'm sure there's a bunch more. So definitely check those out if you're interested, and definitely absolutely check out his latest comedy special, Ralph Barbosa Cowabunga, available now on Netflix. So like I mentioned in the intro, there's a bunch of TV shows that have had their series finales, have come to an end, some of which, by the way, happened months ago. And all of these shows I've broken down previous seasons of by taking deep dives into each one and giving them their own little segment here, but I'm not doing so for their finale, ironically, for a few reasons. Their final seasons didn't resonate with me as much as their previous seasons. Not that they were bad, just that they didn't resonate as much. You know, they weren't bangers like I thought each of the previous seasons were. Some were better than others, but that's one reason. Another reason is some of these ended months ago, maybe even a year ago. I'm just late to catching up and actually watching them. But just from a historical look back perspective of this podcast, you know, being that I did break them down in the past for previous seasons, wanted to at least mention their finales here. And the shows are Dave, Billions, Better Call Saul, and The Chi. So start off with Dave. The first third or 25% of the season started off great, I thought, like right on pace with previous seasons. That first episode when, you know, in this season he's like uber famous, and this is one episode, the first episode, where this girl is pretending not to know who he is all night, claims to be from this small town, and you know, he as a big artist where he's always being recognized, kind of gets pulled towards that. Oh, let me, you know, hang out with the quote unquote common folk. And he kind of likes the girl, but she and her friends knew exactly who he was and were all like plotting on him the entire time. So like blew up in his face. That was a dope episode. Then the second episode, which was all about a video shoot, was a cool episode. I especially liked it, the way it was shot, the way it was directed. They did a lot of hectic looking camera angles. The camera would change from like frame to frame to frame, and all the shots weren't censored, and it was like sporadic and all over the place. And I felt that that was an interesting way to film it because it lined up with randomly Dave, the character, thinks. How he could be speaking about one thing, then goes off on a tangent, then from that tangent splits off into 3 other tangents, then circles back to the original thing he was talking about. And I felt that that's what the director of that episode was intending to show. And it was a funny episode. There was a scene where it reminded me a bit of like a Curb Your Enthusiasm type of scene where he's at a Starbucks and the barista says, "A coffee for Jew? Jew? Are you Jew? Coffee for Jew?" And he's like getting offended. He's like, "Oh my God, you really just like because I'm Jewish?" And the coffee happens to be for a Korean guy named the Jew. So that was funny. But yeah, that episode kind of reminded me of the way like Birdman, the movie, was shot. Kind of like with the camera angles jumping all over the place. And thought it was interesting. But from there on out, and the rest of the season was good, it just fell off for me. And I felt like it was trying to be Atlanta-ish, if that makes sense. I feel like Atlanta was such a seminal show and that it kind of invented its own way of doing TV, like its own genre, if you will. And I felt like the second half, or the second, half to 3/4 of the final season of Dave was trying to emulate that. And it didn't do it as well, in my opinion, as Atlanta, for example. But it was definitely a good season, a great series in general that I highly recommend for folks to check out. Billions Season 7. So this one, out of all the series, to me, had the best ending. And by best, I mean the most satisfying. It was like every single thing that I was rooting for as a viewer, so I'm sure many of you, every single thing tied out in the positive note that you wanted it to. Even to the very unlikely teaming up and friendship, if you will, of Chuck Rhodes and Bobby Axelrod kind of joining forces to defeat their mutual enemy in Mike Prince. And it did so in a way that was contrary, I feel, to like the formula of like the external want and the internal want having to be opposites in order to like satisfy the viewer or consumer of the story. I feel like at the end here, at least for all the main characters, they all got what they wanted. They got closure in relationships, like with Chuck and his dad, Wendy with Chuck, and it seemed like they were on path to putting their family back together. Wendy with her career, Wendy with Bobby Axelrod, blazing her own path, and they both kind of turned their backs on that idea of them hooking up and getting together, which was, I just thought, gross when that happened. Wendy's relationship with Taylor Mason, Taylor's relationship to remain independent, but with the full blessing of Bobby and running her philanthropic arm, all the secondary characters, it was dope. It was really satisfying. For like each character arc was just like ended in a high note, it felt. And that was like the main takeaway of that final season. And I did like the lead-in for the series, how like the very first scene of the first episode was a flashback scene a flash forward scene. So it showed you how the series was going to end, and then it flashed back to present day, and then every episode after that was like leading up to that moment, so you're kind of like anticipating what the fuck was that blow up about. So it made it kind of like Ocean's 11-esque in that way. And there were a couple lines of dialogue that I really enjoyed here that I jotted down, so let me read those to you. First up is, control is often an expression of fear. Next one is, those words just fell out of your mouth like a meth head's teeth. And I like this one. Whatever happened way before memory, that's what drives us. So yeah, definitely a dope series. Very good season. Love the ending. Very satisfying. And that's Billions season. Better Call Saul season 6, if I'm not mistaken, was the series finale, which ended over a year ago. And I just finished up probably a few weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago. Very late. So I think that probably has a lot to do with the series feeling to me as a bit of a letdown. The series finale, rather. Just because I've been disconnected from it for so long. But Better Call Saul, which is the prequel to Breaking Bad, which is arguably, top 3 series all time. I thought Better Call Saul, which again is the prequel after the success of Better Call Saul, it was the prequel that Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould were, able to make and wanted to center around one of the secondary characters of Breaking Bad, which was Saul Goodman, aka Jimmy McGill. And the series itself could be its own standalone series. Like if you never watch Breaking Bad, you could watch Better Call Saul. And there's some like Easter eggs and stuff like that from Breaking Bad that you obviously won't get, but it's definitely not necessary to follow. And the series itself is very interesting, and just seeing how all those characters tie into the Breaking Bad story. And obviously, it's kind of like reverse engineering because Better Call Saul was made after Breaking Bad. So it's easier in a sense because you know where all the characters, just from a creative perspective, I'm thinking. It's easier from a creative perspective because you know where each character needs to end up. But it's also confining in a sense because you confine to certain things that you can or cannot do based on where those characters have to end up. You know what I mean? Very interesting creative exercise to do there, to do like a prequel to an existing story. But this series is definitely a masterclass on that. What Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould were able to do there is really, really dope. Now, the final season itself, it was a bit anticlimactic for me. It was kind of fitting in how it ended, just with Jimmy and Kim and how self-sabotage prone they always were. And Jimmy's like main character trait, at least to me, is kind of like a gambling addict. Like the risk of like getting away with shit and being a con man and giving up a good thing just to start from the bottom and like try to make his way back up, and then giving that up and cutting corners, living on the edge in that way, and trying to get criminals off of crimes by finding loopholes and tricks within the law and the legal system. Like the momentum of those kinds of traits and instincts, a lot of which Kim's character also exhibited and obviously partook in, kind of led them to like the inevitable ending that they had. Which again, when it ended, I was kind of like, that's it? That's how it's gonna end? But it definitely was fitting. It was crazy how Howard Hamlin got by fucking Lalo. That was unexpected. And how Mike's character, as always, trusty old Mike, part of the cleanup crew, just made all that shit go away. And you see Salamanca's rise. And it was pretty cool from all those aspects to see. Again, similar to like a few of the others. Good season, not great. Anticlimactic. Didn't love the ending at all. Not a big fan of the ending, but it was fitting for those characters. But the series itself, and again, the fact that it's a prequel to one of the greatest series of all time, and that it could stand on its own, is definitely worth a watch if you haven't seen the Better Call Saul series. And the last thing I'll say about it is that I still think that it was a missed opportunity, a missed creative opportunity. And I'm saying this completely selfishly, by the way, because it's an idea that I had that didn't really pan out. But early on in Better Call Saul, there was a point where they started showing the black and white Gene flashbacks, where you didn't know if it were flashbacks, flash forwards, you didn't know like what it was. It would just show Jimmy's character, aka Saul Goodman, who was also known as Gene at one point in time when he went into like witness protection or something. It was showing scenes of him working at a Cinnabon, or not in witness protection, actually. He was like just in like self-hiding with that vacuum cleaner salesman that like makes people like disappear and shit. He just, again, couldn't help himself, and his nature was just to be who he was, and got himself caught again. But before it was revealed, like the order of that, how that was who Saul Goodman wound up becoming, I thought it would have been a good idea if that Gene character was like in between the Saul Goodman that we knew from Breaking Bad and Jimmy McGill, and that something occurred to make him have to go into either witness protection or something, where he had to be that Gene character, and then he invented the Saul Goodman character to get out of that like Gene character world or whatever. But I digress. Anyway, Better Call Saul, check it out. The Chi has also come to an end much more recently, and I'm actually still not completely finished watching it. I have like an episode or two to go, but definitely thought it deserved an honorable mention here. There's actually a bunch more that I like from this series than I believe the previous one, but it could also be, you know, recency bias. I mean, the three main characters in Kevin, Jake, and Papa, we started when the Chi started, they were all like children, like elementary school kids, and now they're, at least in the series, graduated from high school, you know, grown up in that sense, you know, before our eyes, before, you know, over the several seasons that the show's been on. 5, I believe, maybe 6. And what this season, final season, does well is that it shows a lot of like flashback scenes. Like Kevin, for example, he graduated high school. He's still into gaming. He's taking it professional. He got like sponsored by like a gaming team. He wound up moving out and getting his own place. And then from there, parlaying that into being able to move to California in pursuit of this untraditional job or like passion of his, which is gaming. And there's scenes with him on the train, which are really cool, where he's like, as he's on the train going through different neighborhoods, remembering like, oh, that's where we used to ride our bikes, and it shows like a flashback scene of them three riding bikes, or like running through the school, or like getting kissed by Maisha the first time, and sad things like when Coogie died and his brother, etc., etc. And as it shows like those flashback scenes, you're like, oh shit, they were real little, like they look mad little. And then you see them now, like in this final season, like, damn, these kids, I really did fucking grow up, yo. Time flies. That's crazy. And I follow a lot of them online, a lot of like the characters and the writers of the series. And when they were filming the final series and like wrapping up for certain characters that, you know, they had shot all their scenes so that they weren't gonna return to set, they're all like crying and like happy, sad, bittersweet about that happening, obviously. But I can just imagine how much like tighter of a relationship they all have on set, like the folks that were there for years and years, not just the actors, but like all the cast and crew and writers, directors. Must be a pretty special relationship. But yeah, also in this series, Duda is in full force as usual. It's fucking like the devil reincarnate, just like taking over the city. And a lot of the characters are grappling with Duda to one degree or another. Emmett winds up getting tied up with him while feeling like pressures to give his family a better life and kind of get ahead of himself. And, you know, he's doing well. He started the business, or took over the Smokies business, beginning to do well. He's with Keisha, trying to do the family thing as well. But he's like a little over ambitious in, you know, wanting the house, wanting the car, wanting to buy his baby mama a car, wanting to expand the business, etc. Wanting to get to where you'd think he'd inevitably get to anyway, but much sooner. And then that allowed Duda the little wiggle room that he needed to entice Emmett and then get him like roped up in his bullshit. And that's a storyline throughout this final series. The folks like Papa's father, the minister, he speaks out against Duda and evil and stuff like that. He went to prison in previous seasons for allowing Duda to wash his money like through the church and repented for it and kind of pushed back on Duda when he wanted to do it again. Then Duda winds up killing him, which was fucking sad. Prior to that happening, though, I thought it was pretty cool. Papa's Pulpit, his podcast, and his father. He invited his father to it, and they spoke about differences that they were having and differences of opinion and just like growth and what it's like to be a father, Papa's perspective, what it's like to be his son. And it was a dope heart-to-heart that they had there on a podcast, which is always pretty cool to see. And when Papa was giving the eulogy for his father, I thought it was interesting. He mentions how his father is who he wanted to be proud of him. I think a lot of us sons feel that way. And his father is who he always wanted to impress. And then also had the realization that we have to write our own moral code to live by for ourselves and not only live someone else's, even if it's our own father's. I thought that was a good coming of age moment, if you will, for Papa's character. What I also thought was pretty dope in the series, like they have this emphasis on mental health and therapy. Like there's a scene with Keisha and her mom and them going to therapy to work on their bullshit, not diminishing their issues, but I'm saying like their shit within their relationship. And Victor, who won city council, he started this like group therapy session type of thing where a bunch of the men in the community could go to and speak about their feelings, speak about their stresses, just have some place to speak on shit that's bothering them. And I think those were good, very good things to show and depict in a series like this. It's a way to help normalize those could be very helpful tools within the community. And yeah, it's a really good season so far. I'm excited to see how it ends and wraps up. But yeah, it's had its ups and downs. There was like 1 or 2 seasons ago, I think, is the one that I was just like, all right, this is just the way everybody was fucking everybody. It was just like, what? How does that, how does that even, I don't know, just trying to do like the mental math of it just didn't add up. So it kind of lost me for a bit, but obviously I stuck with the series, want to see it through, and I'm glad to see where it's at, where it's headed, and appreciative of Lena Waithe, the creator, and the other writers over there at The Chi for putting together a really great series. And that is The Chi series finale, available on Showtime. And that, folks, was episode 248 of the Spun Today Podcast. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen. I appreciate each and every one of you for doing so. If you're listening to this on Thanksgiving when the episode releases or around it, I hope you had a good one. Hope you enjoyed yourselves, your families, your friends, and I hope you found time for yourself, for your creative craft. Please stick around for just a couple more minutes so you can listen to a few different ways that you can help support this show if you so choose. And remember, if you're doing any early holiday shopping, please visit com/support, where you can use a bunch of my affiliate links to do some of your shopping, whether it be on Amazon, Stitch Fix, Mockup Shots, Libsyn, and more. spuntoday.com/support. It means a ton. Until next time, peace. What's up, folks? Tony here. I hope you're enjoying this podcast as much as I enjoy producing it for you. Here are a few quick ways you can help support this show. You can support the Spun Today podcast by going to spuntoday.com/support. There, you'll find my merch section, where you can cop the iconic Podcasts vs. Anybody t-shirt in a wide variety of different colors and all different sizes. Also, if you're into cycling, you can cop the super soft, comfortable, minimalist design Spun Today Bike Club t-shirt. Also available in a bunch of different colors in all different sizes. There are a few other designs of different types of t-shirts. Definitely go there and check it out. spuntoday.com/support. It's the merch section. where you can also get a dope coffee mug. I have coffee mugs with the brand new redesigned Spun Today logo on one side and the tagline that I end every show with on the other, which is start taking steps in the general direction of your dreams. The mug is available in both black and white, because we don't discriminate here at the Spun Today Podcast. Again, go to spuntoday.com/support and check out the merch section. You can support the Spun Today Podcast by checking out my writing. You can go to spuntoday.com/free writing and check out some of my free association writing, which is intended to be some cathartic free writing, but oftentimes doubles down as motivation for myself and others. At spuntoday.com/short stories, you can read a bunch of the different short stories that I've written and actually listen to the audiobook versions of those short stories there as well. Another way you can help support my writing is by going to spuntoday.com/books and checking out what I have in store for sale. Digital copies are available in all formats, whether it be Kindle, iBooks, or a different type of e-reader. You can also purchase paperback copies if that's your preferred reading method. Currently available, I have my nonfiction, Make Way for You, which is a collection of freely written thoughts that were curated and put together as tips for getting out of your own way. Also available is my debut time travel novel titled FRACTAL. Again, go to spuntoday.com/books to show your support. Support the Spun Today Podcast by following me on social, at Spun Today on Twitter, at Spun Today on Instagram. Please also check out and like my Facebook page, facebook.com/Spun Today, and subscribe to my YouTube page as well. On my YouTube page, not only will you get these full-length episodes, but you'll also get to check out some chopped up clips and bonus content. To get to my YouTube page, just search Spun Today on YouTube or click on any of the YouTube icons on the footer of my website. Also, don't forget to rate and review this podcast wherever it is that you're listening. It really does help. The Spun Today newsletter is available to each and every one of my listeners absolutely for free. All you have to do is go to spuntoday.com/subscribe and drop in your email address. What I'm going to do is brighten up everybody's least favorite day of the week by delivering 5 curated things within my weekly newsletter every Monday at noon. You're going to receive a photo of the week, a recommended podcast of the week. I listen to tons of podcasts from an array of varied interests. I cherry pick the very best ones so that you can check them out. I also share a video of the week, which can be anything from a tasty recipe to a dope rap battle to an enlightening TED Talk. I also share a quote of the week. And finally, for my fellow wordsmiths out there, a word of the week so that you can step up your vocab. Again, this curated list is yours absolutely free by going to spuntoday.com/subscribe and dropping in your email address, and you can unsubscribe at any time. Again, go to spuntoday.com/subscribe, drop in your email address, and you'll get the very next one. If you want to help support the Spun Today Podcast financially, you can do so by going to spuntoday.com/support. Here you'll find a few different ways that you can do so. You can shop on Amazon, but first go to my website, spuntoday.com/support, click on the Amazon banner, which will take you to Amazon's website where you do your shopping like you normally do. It will not cost you anything extra, but I will get credit for driving traffic to their website. Another cool way that you can help support this show is through Patreon, where you can set up reoccurring donations to my podcast, whether it be $1 per show, $2 per show, etc. And depending on how much you choose to pledge, you will receive some Patreon perks in return. Things like free writing pieces, free bookmarks, free digital copies of my books, etc. Again, my Patreon link can be found at spuntoday.com/support. You can also set up similar reoccurring payments via my Ko-fi page. And if you want to send a one-time happiness bomb donation, if you will, you can do so via my PayPal link. Again, all of which can be found at spuntoday.com/support. If you're a fellow creative, a cool way that you can help support the Spun Today podcast and actually be part of the podcast is by filling out my 5-question questionnaire located at spuntoday.com/questionnaire. Here you'll find 5 open questions related to your craft, your art, what inspires you to create, what type of unrelated hobbies you're into, and what motivates you to get your work done. You can choose to remain anonymous or plug your website and your work. And once you submit your questionnaire, I read your responses on a future episode of the Spun Today podcast. It's completely free at no cost to you. And what I like to say about it is that if your responses could potentially spark inspiration in someone else, why not share that? spuntoday.com/questionnaire. And as always, folks, substitute the mysticism with hard work and start taking steps in the general direction of your dreams. Thanks for listening. I love you, Aiden.
I love you, Daddy.
I love you, Grayson.
I love you, Daddy.